My name is Jason McGehee, and I'm the speaker today, at least for the next half hour or so. And I appreciate everyone attending here. I'm humbled to be here, I would say. I'm also not a natural public speaker, so please bear with me with that as well. But I do have a passion for the industry, and I really like to share some of my passions with my peers and colleagues, which, I'm honored to be amongst again. So I've learned so much in the last few days, just from our conversations and workshops. And I'm hoping to share some of my experiences with everyone else here in the hopes that we can understand a little bit more about how to make our industry a better industry. As you see, the title of my presentation is Integrating Operational Readiness with Building Commissioning. And one of the things that we've found over the last 3 years operating our firm is that there's a lot of opportunities that don't necessarily get mentioned into a commissioning RFP or a commissioning scope, or even owners and entities that are looking for commissioning agents. I believe there's a lot of things that we are so well suited to do because we have the expertise, we have the abilities, and in many projects we have the time to bring into the schedule to do this work. And our firm, Argo Performance, has made this a priority, and we want to share this. And then my main goal is just to plant a seed in everyone's thought pattern about how can we expand the commissioning business. I really believe that in the history of commissioning, at least the most of the clients that I work with, they see us as function testing people that goes out and tests the systems, verify that everything works. And I believe that should be our number one goal. But it's not the only goal of commissioning. I mean, commissioning is all about transitioning from a construction environment to an operation and maintenance environment that gets involved with a lot of classic things that we learned from the ACG guidelines as well as ASHRAE, training, operation and maintenance manuals, system manuals, and other various deliverables that we can do. My goal tonight is just to propose a couple of extra ones that we have been working on quite successfully, and how to incorporate them into your scopes or even into additional work or change orders that can enhance not only your revenue stream, but I think just elevate the service offerings that commissioning people do. And then I'm just going to keep moving forward in the presentation. This is some legalese. That's my logo. I designed it myself. I'm pretty proud of it. So the course description is in the period of time between the general contractor turnover and operational readiness. There's an opportunity for commissioning firms to integrate unique commissioning services that will assist the new operators with this transition. So essentially, if we work with our owners, and particularly the ones that are in the private sector, not so much in the public sector, there's a huge amount of work that our owners have when they take over a new facility. I mean, they're moving from an older facility into a newer facility. They're trying to learn it. They're trying to move people into it. They're full of the woulda, shoulda, couldas. And there's a whole lot of things that I believe that we can do, and we have expertise to help them with this process. It's a little bit beyond commissioning, because at this time, typically we're finishing up our acceptance testing, doing some trending, writing some reports. We're kind of winding down that acceptance period. And we still have some time around that job, working with long-term trends, maybe some deferred testings and things of this nature. And I think that we can take advantage of that time and offer some of these additional services. So you're going to learn some methods about how to offer these services, how to find them, identify the opportunity, who the decision makers are, who the stakeholders are. You're going to learn how to implement a few of them, and we're not going to get into a whole lot of technical things. I know a lot of people here are real strong technically, but this is not a technical presentation. This is quasi-business development and industry enhancement presentation. And the ultimate goal is to be able to have the firm go out and be able to sell these as additional services. And my motivation out of this, if some of us here are competitors and some of us here are peers, if my competitors are offering these services, it gives the industry to offer these services, and then owners know to look at commissioning companies for these services. They don't think of us as a single one-time operation or a single limited servicing operation. Our learning objectives: understand what is operational readiness, commissioning firms' traditional roles in operational readiness. We do participate in this process already, but we have already defined it kind of internally and not so much externally to the people who are involved. And to identify opportunities to provide additional service to enhance. And that's kind of a role. I kind of made a few of these up. What is operational readiness? I steal this term. A lot of my clients revolve around life science and GMP. We do a lot of mission critical things. I would say as Argo, our work is about 70% private sector manufacturing, GMP, life science, and like 30% public sector, mainly military. We're based out of San Diego, so we do a lot of Navy work down there. Just told me you can't really be in business in San Diego and not do business with the biggest entity in San Diego, which is the U.S. Navy. So that kind of defines our perspective of this, and I know people have different client perspectives, so you have to kind of apply some of these things to your client perspective. But operational readiness is the period of time when the construction has completed and the facility is ready for intended purpose. So the owner has to come in the facility to set up. They're moving furniture in, they're hanging signs, they're creating their maintenance programs, they're identifying assets, they're finding out the things that they forgot to do during construction. It's like, oh geez, we forgot to tell them to put the outlet over here or some utilities over here. They're really involved with just the process of starting the building up, which is kind of like starting up a great big tractor trailer. That they don't hit 90 miles an hour right away. It takes them a while to get up the road and go, and that's a new facility. And it's also a transition of ownership. So during the build process, the general contractor owns the site, and then one day the owner owns the site. They're just handed the keys and a stack of manuals, and see you later. And of course it involves stocking, moving in, and we're performing acceptance testing and the equipment move-ins, starting at maintenance programs, identifying the maintenance needs and the roles and things of this nature, what consumables they need to stock, what spare parts they need to stock, providing janitorial SOPs or schedules, a whole slew of things that anyone's been around construction has certainly obviously participated at one point in time. Our firm identified that this was a great opportunity to do things to enhance our revenue stream, enhance our involvement, and more importantly, add more value to the client by engaging ourselves in this activity. And we found that there was a lot of gaps that we could take advantage of in our commissioning schedule that allowed us to work on these activities. Now, for example, we are involved heavily in the design process, but then once the building is built or in the process of construction, particularly in structural and architectural construction, there's not a lot that we're doing, at least our firm as a commissioning agent. There's a lot of downtime there. And what we have found is that we ask ourselves, what can we do to take advantage of this time? What can we do to make this time better use and stay engaged in the project? And we identified a few things that we can do that helps at the end of the project that we could do during that time. And these gaps that I'm talking about, they can last months, years sometimes. So we just finished up a project that was designed in 2014, and we're just now completing commissioning or acceptance testing. And operational readiness doesn't go on to July, and they're probably not going to have full scale up until the end of January. So there's a long time that we could take advantage of that. It's a biotech, a little more complicated project. So we found a way for us to keep engaged during that whole project scale so we can add value to the client. It was pretty good. And what we have also found out is that the more commissioning engagement, the better, more successful operational readiness is, And then from a business standpoint, we found that the more engagement is, the more our fees are, the more economic opportunity we have to improve ourselves. And I kind of created this chart to basically gauge us, and this chart may vary from firm to firm, so I use these numbers about engagement. As you see, over here is the pre-design or design, and then we get into design, and this represents our time of engagement, and then this represents our, I gotta step out here, I'm too blind to read that. The blue represents the product timeline, the project's timeline, and then this represents our engagement within that timeline. So we see during construction, we have a lot of dead time that we're not fully engaged. And then obviously in acceptance, the project is a little smaller schedule. You know, most of the time it's like 5 days or something, but we're fully engaged at that time. And then in post-construction, it changes quite a bit. And this is just kind of another way to look at it from a percentage scale. The moral of the story is that there is time that the project's occurring that commissioning agents and commissioning firms don't have a deliverable or don't have even an opportunity to work on certain deliverables. And I recharted it with a base chart here where you have the job timeline here, and then basically our experience. You see that plateaus, and we have a lot of time up in front here. So our firm wanted to basically flatline this as much as possible. We wanted to stay a certain consistency all the way through acceptance with the acknowledge that acceptance gets busy, and then we go back to our normal flatline. So we didn't want to have such, I don't know how you call that curve, but we wanted more of a peak during the acceptance test. And what we're already seeing is that there's some trends in operational readiness. I mean, we were just working on a proposal for the U.S. Navy, and we noticed that the UFGS, with the whole building commissioning, has already kind of enhanced some of the things they want delivered to them. So like there's asking for the commissioning agents to provide maintenance plans, life cycle cost analysis, helping of entering information in the computerized maintenance mechanic programs. And that's gone beyond of what we would normally do, which is like an O&M review and creating a system manual. So we're already seeing that the government, which really drives a lot of what happens in commissioning, is really saying, hey, there's a lot of value that these really smart people have. Let's use them because they know our facility very well, and they can help us write these documents and SOPs. So what I'm going to go through is just some of the SOPs and documents that we have, or programs that we've created, and result in good success. One of the criteria that we determined as a company is that we didn't want to veer off from commissioning. So any additional services that we wanted to provide had to complement commissioning. We didn't want to do something that was completely different. Like, for example, I didn't want to offer like landscaping services, or we're going to change our light bulbs. So the things that we wanted to do, wanted just to keep commissioning going. We wanted to make sure that the things we did complemented the overall goals of commissioning. So these were just bolt-on services, not a completely new line. So that was a huge criteria. And the other thing was it had to be of a direct benefit to the client. We didn't want to sell client services that they didn't need. So if the client didn't have an interest in it, we didn't really sell the service. And the other thing, true, we didn't want to impact the project schedule or timeline. That was the other thing. We wanted to make sure that we can allocate enough time and resources to accomplish these tasks, but while maintaining the construction schedule. And we wanted to make sure that everything was just done to completion and we had the right time to get it to completion. So who in our client's organization plans operational readiness? So part of the trick to understanding this is that a lot of the operational readiness activities is not done during the construction process. There's typically other teams that are involved. There's move-in teams. There's even other consultants that are brought in to work with this. So one of the things that you have to find out on the project is investigate who are these other people that are planning these activities. Is it a consultant? Is it a separate project leader? Is it a different group? Now, sometimes a building is being constructed by a facility and engineering group, and then the operational readiness functions may be implemented by a maintenance and operations group, which is led by a totally different team. And some of these services may be funded through different buckets of money. So, for example, if a new construction that's a CapEx or some other type of funding vehicle, but the operations may come out of an OpEx or some other budget. So it's important to understand where the money's coming from, because this might actually end up being an additional contract and not necessarily a change order contract to the construction or to the construction manager. So understanding how that money is, where that money is at to allocate for those activities, then you have to find out who controls that money, and then where they get who's their influencers to make the decisions, and you have to influence them, find out what they want. And then, as I said, the clients may have several departments. And it's important for the commissioning agent, I think overall, just to understand who these people are will make us better commissioning agents for our normal duties that we're doing or our required duties. But I think it's going to help you understand better what the project overall needs are. I mean, you'll go back and start saying, hey, all this stuff are things that we could put into an OPR or modify an OPR and change things around. So getting these people involved, well, I think will just make us better commissioning agents. So example, I'm going to go through 6 additional services that we offered, and we offer quite successfully. And I would say in our firm, without a doubt, that we generate 40% of our overall revenue through these additional services. And one of the things that we know with some of our special clients, and particularly in critical facilities in the areas of GMP, we know that we can also leverage our bid to get this work, knowing that we can go in and get these types of services. So it's given us a competitive advantage to go in and get things. So we can say, okay, we're going to reduce the commissioning costs because we know we have an opportunity for this, and no one's looking at that right now, and we can use that as our recoup cost. So, and these are just some of the ideas that we have. These are our most popular offerings. It's Lockout-Tagout, standard operating procedures development, access, asset induction, maintenance programs, document management, and metrology. And we'll just have a slide on each one. I told everyone, so you say you're going to be here for an hour. There's no way I can't talk for an hour. You guys, everyone to go to sleep, probably me too. So we're going to get, this will be a quick presentation actually. The first one, and this is a popular one for us, is developing and test and train on a lockout-tagout system. A lockout-tagout system is the ability to isolate critical utilities, whether it be in electricity or steam or high-pressure gases, and create a safe mechanism and a safe organize a safe systems for properly locking out and tagging out systems for service. And I think as commissioning agents, this is great for us because we know where all these valves, where all these disconnects and all these tags are at. And the beauty of this is that once we identify a lockout-tagout program, we can identify this from drawings and develop this program during the construction process. So while the building's being built, we can meet with the maintenance and the EH&S people and say, how do you want to develop this program? The signage, locking systems, keying systems, and things of this nature. I mean, this is used with electricity, it's used with high-pressure gases and fluids. We did one just a while back. It was a huge change order for us, and we were able to write the whole operating procedures for it. We created all the locking mechanisms for it, and we created a whole turnover program for safe lockout and tagout. The beauty of it is there's so many of these programs that are out there already. It's not like you have to write one from scratch. There's basically good opportunities to construct your own with the material that's already out there. It's just a fact of getting the confidence in doing this, identifying the circuit breakers, identifying the disconnects, understanding what tools you need to isolate those disconnects. Do you need a circuit breaker lock, or whatever they call them, or a padlock, or a multi-user lock, and write all that up in an SOP. And the icing on the cake is that if you could do this during the construction project, so let's say you start while they're putting up steel and concrete, you could work on these things, you can actually commission these things so that you know that they're done right. So you can execute during this as a commissioning protocol, test your own lockout-tagout system. And then when the owner walks into the building, he doesn't have to think about his lockout-tagout system. It's already done. It's well safe. That's a huge value to some organizations, especially risk-averse organizations. The next thing I talk about is write and test standard operating procedures. And I think a lot of commissioning agents already do this, but as I say, we work a lot with life sciences. We work a lot with companies with extensive QAs and QC departments and manufacturing. We do a little bit of critical facilities. It's not a data centers. It's not a big chunk of our business. But those businesses are all driven by SOPs. They want SOPs for just about everything. I mean, I'm surprised they don't have an SOP for getting out of your car and getting your coffee in the morning. So, but they put everything in an SOP, including maintenance protocols. So, for example, you can write an SOP for how to change a filter on an air handler. And that SOP could contain information like you're going to need a 10 millimeter wrench. You're going to need a flashlight because the lighting inside the unit is not adequate. You got to provide 6 of these type of MERV 11 filters. And you're going to need to make sure that you have a ladder because you need a ladder to get to the unit. And then you write off the steps. Shut down the unit. Remove the gate for access. Pull the old filters out. Put the new filters in. Verify with the mag gauge it's set right, and then restart the unit. That's a simple one, but some SOPs get pretty intense. And if you're writing like how to deal with a central plant, how to deal with an emergency blackout in a building, how to deal when a generator fails to start. There's some real critical ones there. People may go crazy because, hey, we don't know what to do if our generator doesn't start. Well, probably not a whole lot you can do, but at least they can have a document that they can run to and say, hey, instead of me going crazy, now we have an SOP that they can just go off and just execute those items. And again, the beauty of these SOPs is that they align with commissioning, because if we write these things up front with commissioning, we could test them during the acceptance phase or the post-acceptance phase. We can actually ourselves read our own documents, just check them off. And if there's an error, like we missed a step or if a step needs to be added, we could edit it right there. And then the client has a consistent, well-constructed SOP. And we find this is very beneficial. We see this. Maybe they don't want an SOP for every filter changes, but blackout SOPs. What happens if we're on e-power or on standby power? What happens if we lose network connectivity with the control system? How do we operate our building in a hand environment? And these are things that commissioning agents are so well to investigate what they need to do and document it. We do it so much and so well. It's just a great thing to offer. And they get clients loving that, particularly in the critical facilities and things of that nature. The other thing that we've done, and I think we do this on just about every job, is because we go out and collect this information anyways, is we help and verify asset induction. So to most companies, assets are things that are bolted to the building and they need to keep track of, because the asset typically has, from an accounting, a depreciation. I said that wrong. No. What is that? You're the haggler, aren't you, right? Yeah, he's my boss, so he's going to give me. So, anyways, it's you get the gist. There's an accounting thing to it, and they need to control those assets. What's a bottle? What's a serial number? Where is it at? Is it tagged? And we capture a lot of this information when we're doing our equipment inspections, when the equipment's arriving on site. And it's like, hey, I got this whole database of stuff. All I gotta do is throw it in the format that you need it, and it's a deliverable. And we typically get paid pretty handsomely for that, particularly with Fortune 500 companies that are really looking at those things pretty well. You know, again, if there's additional assets, we know the building so well, we know how to find them. Or we could help them identify it. They may consider, like for example, a flow meter, even though it's not bolted to the building, they still might consider that an asset that needs to be tracked. So we're in great line, because I think we're doing that work already. And it's awesome, and it's a great opportunity. Yes, sir.
Are you working with CMMS systems to help them develop their asset inventory?
We do. Typically, we don't help them select their CMS system. I mean, we're not experts in the different variances. A lot of times, what we'll do with the computerized maintenance management systems is we've been asked to sit in on the presentations, and then we'll put our 2 cents in for the opinion to what they want to get, and then they move on. But what we do is that we'll help set them up. We'll actually start developing the program for them, like, okay, creating the schedules, creating the maintenance activities. If something has to be done on a quarterly basis that needs an automatic work order, we'll try to identify that and then help them set that up. And then we get that information from the contractor. So to equip, like, let's say, like we use purified water, the purified water vendor comes in, does his training. We'll ask the question, say, okay, what is the monthly activities? What are the consumables that we need? What are the maintenance activities? And if they, for example, say you need to change this filter every quarter, then we would get that part number from the filter, and we'll go to the CMMS and say, this needs to be changed every quarter, and then it has to create a work order.
Just a follow-up question, are you using COVID compliant spreadsheets to report asset data?
COVID compliant spreadsheet? I'm not exactly sure what you're talking about when you say.
Basically, an open protocol, CSV type format that a number of the CMMS systems are using, so that you can take data, say, out of commissioning web portal and import it directly into the CMMS, so you're not doing double data entry.
I would say we it depends on job per job. I would say we track everything to Excel. Just easy for us. And then if they ask us to export it in a certain way, then we do. Typically, we don't really manage the CMMS system. There's usually an in-house person that does that, but they're an expert on the CMMS software, not necessarily the content of the software, but it's kind of like a webmaster. A webmaster knows how to make a web page and make it real pretty and make a lot of lights, but they don't know all the information that needs to go on it. So we help them author the documents that go into their systems. So what we end up doing is give it to them in a format that he requests or she requests, and let them do the legwork to get it in. And which is kind of our next question is maintenance programs. As a customer or a client gets a new building, there isn't a maintenance program set up. They're starting from zero. A lot of times they don't even know where to start. There's so much new equipment. There's so many new things to do. And it's in the back of their mind. And some clients believe that the building's under warranty, and they don't understand that warranty in most cases is just coming back and fixing things. It's not changing filters or changing oil or doing the thing or cleaning things that need to be cleaned on a periodic basis. So they're getting all this thing kind of started up, and again, I think as commissioning agents, I think one of the greatest things that we can do for our clients, if they wish, as an additional service, is to go through and compile all this information from them. Say, hey, this air compressor over here, this requires a new intake filter every 2 months. Let's get that into your CMMS. And this, and also it has an auto drain that needs to be replaced once a year. And then for daily rounds, as far as someone checking the equipment, someone should check this once a day or once a week or whatever they feel comfortable with. We can help them set those programs up. We have the contractors there, we typically have easy access to the vendors at that time who are more than happy to help out. We have access to finding out what the material and consumable items that we need to stock at the facility, and we can pretty much gauge the time it's going to take. Again, the other thing about maintenance programs, if you develop a whole maintenance protocol, you can actually test that maintenance protocol and make sure that it can successfully be done. That you can actually go through maintenance from A to B and have a reasonably skilled employee be able to execute that whole program top to bottom. And a lot of facilities that we work in, mainly in the critical environments, in the pharma industry, really like that. They like the idea that a reasonably skilled person can take one of the maintenance protocols and fully execute it. And again, we don't see a lot of these coming online for like a year and a half after. And by that time, a lot of the equipment hasn't been maintained, so the building owners are starting from behind by the time they implement these CMMS systems. They're just behind the 8 ball already because they've been too busy moving in and addressing issues and tuning the building. And us as commissioning agents, this is a good way for us to extend our contracts and our life with these facilities, as well as generating future revenue by helping them maintain these systems. I mean, as they grow or mature, add new systems, they may want us to come back and say, hey, can you help us? We just added this new lyophilizer. Can you help us write the maintenance procedures for the lyophilizer? And you say, yeah, why not? It's not a big deal. We go over there, let's figure it out. And I just think it's a credible opportunity for us as an industry. Number 5, this one's been one that's kind of dear to me because we've developed several of these already, and this is document management. So as commissioning agents, we write a system manual, and the contractors give them this big turnover package that's in 100 binders or on the thumb drive, and it's completely disorganized. And they have a tab report somewhere, and God knows what else. The engineers give them record drawings. But what do they do with all that stuff? I mean, how many times have you gone into a facilities office and all that stuff is just thrown over on the corner somewhere, left to rot, and they can't find it in 6 months because a mouse ate through it or something. They throw it in a closet and they forget about it. We have had a lot of clients get interested in us and saying, hey, can you help us put together a document management system so where we can put all these documents in electronic format that matches our way of doing business, not the way construction was built. Construction's using the CSI class, which is well organized. But buildings have different types of classes. There's actually some cross relationships. So like an Omni class is used in buildings and operations. And how do we transition all those documents from construction into the Omni class system? And then how do we organize that system so it can be easily accessible by the people who need it? Keywords, tags, things of this nature. It's a huge deal. I really enjoyed our last few documentation management programs because I think I saw the results at the very end. It was just a great benefit to the client. He can go and instantly find his any document he wanted on any system. And I know that there's been a lot of companies out there that develop the software that are advertising that they can do that, but what I find with them is that they don't necessarily have the expertise to understand the document they have and how it applies to the facility. Then, for example, we have a tab report and say, geez, this tab report has a lot of applications. It affects air conditioning, it affects ventilation, it may affect some processes if the processes are on some loops. So the tab report can be linked to several different areas inside of the building. Same thing with startup sheets. So we can the document management systems help just align all the documents that were done for construction into this, as well as when they have to do TIs and changeouts, it helps them understand their record drawings. Here's our record drawing from our last construction. So when they can send it out to the engineer, they know they have the right drawing. This is not the drawing they think is the right one. They know just because it's well organized and digitized. and they could just send it out, and the architect could work on it and send it back, and now they have revision control. They could tell the original and as well as the modified. So they do TIs over a period of time where you have one area that has like 4 or 5 TIs, they could have revisions of the drawings. We're really getting a lot of requests for document management. We really don't know of a lot of companies out there that are doing it. We know a lot of companies that are selling the software, but I don't see a lot of companies or organizations actually know how to implement this and do it right. And just what I think with the expertise that we have here in the ACG, that we have the expertise to do it. It's really, because we understand buildings and systems and operations and construction better than I think anyone out there. So it's something to look into. And then the last one I talk about, and this one kind of hits the more the science communities. As I say, our thing is life science, is helping people set up metrology programs, which is just a fancy word for calibration. And particularly in some built environments that are life science, we kick out the word GXPs, where there's regulatory requirements to track temperature, humidity, pressure, certain things accurately. There's a commissioning guideline, and we can actually help them set up those commissioning guidelines. And it's actually pretty straightforward. We identify all the critical instruments. They're typically called impacted instruments, systems that impact their process. And we find out what the manufacturer's recommendation for calibration is, and then we basically set up a schedule around the manufacturer's recommendation. Create a couple stickers and an SOP, and you're out the door running. It's a very straightforward thing to do. Huge benefit for biotechs, healthcare, life science, GXP facilities, even some manufacturing facilities. So, as I said, our results after we started offering these services, that it increased our revenue by 40%. And not only did it increase our revenue, the amount of our rate per hour increases for these services. Because typically we're on the job and we say, hey, do you have anyone to use this, to do this work for you? The client says no. We typically just write a change order or a contract, and they don't really shop the number. I would say 90% of the cases. So it's a great negotiated work. You just negotiate right there. It's an excellent business. And we're finding that this is becoming a more and more part of our business. Again, they don't really want to neglect the function testing and the things that we do extremely well already, but I think they're looking for us to help them develop those systems and bring them into their facility and kind of live with their facility for a little bit longer than what we normally do. And a closing thought, the industry views commissioning people as a test and verify and equipment post-construction. So really, they just see us as people that come out, test things, make sure everything works right, kind of make sure that the O&M manuals are in good order, make sure the training happens, and then we disappear. The one thing about, I think that the general perception of the public, especially in the building contractors, architects, engineers, is that commissioning agents have a much more broad services that they can offer if they choose to. And that I think that one of the things that we're positioning Argo as our company is that we're moving from being just a commissioning company, which kind of describes a phase of construction, to say that we're operation and maintenance professionals. And we go from the commissioning all the way through supporting your facility from a technical standpoint of helping you operate it better documents, better procedures, better management through assets, and whatever other services we manage to stumble across that we're going to do. So we try not to say no to too many opportunities if it matches our criteria for complementing what our core business is commissioning. We're not running away from our core business, but we sure want a bunch of other businesses to help make additional money and keep our guys busy. So with that being said, I believe that's the end of my spiel. which was not as long as I thought it was going to be. So I'm glad that everyone's still living. Is there any questions or any comments? I think I see one back there.
I have a question. You mentioned omni-class. Is that something that's mandated by the owners?
Yeah, typically the owners will say we want our documents organized this way. And a lot of times they'll ask us, say, how do you recommend doing it? And I've used OmniClass on a few projects because it aligns well with the CSI, the master format. They're basically the same numbers, just a few adjustments, so it's not too hard to migrate to an OmniClass. But then what we usually do is we break down the OmniClass into more subclasses, and that's what the OmniClass does a little bit better, is that it kind of granulates from the master format into a little bit more details about that equipment. So right now, we're actually doing that where we have a BIM model. The contractors are turning over the BIM model to the owner, and we're helping them to identify their assets through BIM, and their assets will cross-reference the OmniClass number. So through the BIM model, they'll have direct access to the documentation and everything. So we're going back through the drawings, and for example, and if this is like a chiller, for example, we'll go back through the drawings, and then every drawing that has a chiller on it will have that referenced in the BIM model, as well as all our commissioning forms, all the startup sheets, and all the maintenance logs. So if someone says, yeah, well, here's this chiller, they could go find it in the BIM model, they could look on the 3D, they could look on all the 2D drawings, as well as they can go grab all the operation and maintenance manuals and the work history and things of this nature. But there's others out there. Do you have a question?
Actually, more of a comment. I got into the business about 10 years ago, and one of the things that I learned early on was the performance curve of a commissioning project, a new construction commissioning project. You kind of have this kind of curve, right? Double peak curve. You peak a little bit in design, and then you peak right in construction phase or acceptance testing. And from a business standpoint, as you were pointing out, it's hard to schedule your work so that you keep your guys level as far as the work effort. Okay? And this is perfect for filling that. I mean, I wanted to do something like this for years, and you guys have been doing it for how long?
We started doing this about 4 years ago.
I'd like to talk to you some more.
Sure. I'd be happy to share some information. So, but yeah, it does. It flattens out. It does. There's two big advantages. One, we keep our beat in the project. So because we're there, we're seeing the RFIs, we're seeing the change orders, we're kind of seeing a part of the discussions why things happen and don't happen. And then the other one is that we're working with the O&M team we're getting to know, we're building those relationships. And the result of that is that we're getting paid to do that. And we're really understand. At that time, we're starting to learn about what their concerns on, because you start talking about to the maintenance guys and to the security guys and the health and safety people, they're going to tell you right away what their concerns are, and that may affect the way that we change our functional testing. We may modify our functional testing or add some elements to address their specific concerns. You say, hey, you're concerned about this type of hazmat facility, no problem. We'll make sure we address that in our function testing for that. And the byproduct of that is we get additional revenue because I think we're doing some real valuable stuff for them. So yeah, it's a great way to backfill work. Yes, sir.
I think there's another comment on that. I think obviously it's industry specific. About 95% of my business is in biopharma, and I find complete alignment. I would say we end up adding services on 75% of our jobs. the biopharma world has such a tremendous amount of work associated with the documentation side when you're in a GMP environment. A lot of times, the client can't support it, especially coming out of CapEx. It's a natural fit. They're more than willing if you get them a solution to do it. I think as an industry, we should look at what other industries or what other sectors can support that model. Because in biopharma, it's almost a given. I mean, we get asked what do we offer. What else can we do along these lines? We absolutely are going to do some more than half our jobs.
Yeah, especially in biopharma. I mean, that's how we learned about it, and then as we grew into our other markets, like where we get into manufacturing, we do some defense manufacturers that have high quality, maybe not regulated like the biopharma, but they have to have, they're building, multi-million-dollar toilets for the government. They can't mess them up, so they got to have procedures and everything for that price, and. No, and we're also starting to see that from the public sector specifications. I said we started bidding some work about a month ago with the USGS, the general. This is the whole building commissioning specification. There's like a whole slew of stuff they want you to do in there, life cycle analysis, maintenance plans, and so I really think that the industry is going to move in that direction. I think it's just a wonderful opportunity for all of us to do this. Now, obviously, not every single one of our clients are going to want this, but there are going to be clients that are going to need this type of work. I'd imagine that some school systems would need this type of work because they just don't have that infrastructure in-house to kind of build it up. And that's just a speculation on my part. I used to do a lot of schools. But healthcare is another one. It's getting more and more regulated. Now they have to have SOPs that work, that have been proven to work. That's another thing, is that it's the difference to have a maintenance plan that you have and it may not work, where if you write a maintenance plan and you go through an approval process and then you go and actually execute it in a test environment, like commissioning it, and then evaluate it for your pitfalls and have acceptance fail criteria, and then that becomes a document, kind of a record document, then that's a great for anyone who has a tight QA/QC department. So
We actually had a global client who mandated that operational readiness was moved into the CapEx budget on a per-project basis because they so spectacularly failed handling the buildings and trying to have the normal infrastructures.
yeah, yes, sir.
Yeah, back on that slide, offering number 4 on maintenance programs.
Yep. Let's see if I can find it. This one?
Yeah, I wanted to ask you, what you're not advocating, starting to get outside of your standard of care and your insurability and potential exclusion by contract clauses. You're not actually advocating coming up with your own maintenance procedures or widgets and equipment and pieces of apparatus that are going to go above and beyond or below manufacturing guidelines, right? You're trying to put the whole plan cohesive together. You wouldn't be telling people how to pour out things with a compressor or something like that.
You're correct. So like overhauling a piece of equipment, that's something that we don't necessarily get into. But what we find in most maintenance and operations manuals, there's just like in your car manual, they're going to have recommended procedures that you do every so many run hours or every so many calendar days. And we compile all of that information because that's just sorting through tons and tons and tons of documents. I mean, that takes, a sizable facility, that could take a week or two just to kind of gather that information. And then we just develop an execution, a method of organizing that, and then also what they need to execute that, when they need to do it, there's key times, and then what tools and equipment they need to have, what materials they need to have.
Yeah, I think to add to that, where the real value comes in is oftentimes, like you said, you work with the Navy, so you have NAVFAC versus Army Corps of Engineers versus maybe a GSA project, just to speak of the government projects. They all have their own standards, and they're sometimes above or below the manufacturer's standards. So you have to strictest standard, compile that, make sure that all of the requirements are included, and then pass that on to the owner.
Yeah, and I'll be quite frank, I haven't offered most of my services that I offer this way, it's typically towards the private sector. The public sector work, like you say, they typically have their own standards and tend to have groups that are already set up to do that. But I do think there's an opportunity in the public sector, because I'm seeing it just in the RFPs now. This gentleman.
You're offering up with sounds a lot like the systems manual, other than maybe the purchase of the bin model and the certificates, purchase orders, those kind of things. Could you expand on this a little bit?
Certainly. So when we say documentation management, it's basically how does a person find information very efficiently when they need something. Now, for example, space planners may need to find architectural arrangements for a room, and how do they go through a set of drawings efficiently, quickly, to find the A-sheets that show the room layouts that they need to have. So the documentation management is not so much about authoring documents, it's just organizing them in a format that the users could find them quickly. And so typically it's a piece of software out there, there's several of them out there that we would decide as a team to use, and it's just populating that software. Kind of like what our approach is on CMMS. We would basically have a software that's already set up, and then we're just populating this with the things that needs to go in. Where a systems manual is kind of a creative product, so it's, we're putting a manual for how to operate the building, and it's very specific, and it's driven towards facility engineers. Our documentation management is extremely broad. Anyone can kind of get to it that they wish to have access. So we have like lab planners, we have support vendors that are trying to bring in equipment. IT people use it to find out where they have all their drops located. So we try to build these document systems so they're just user-friendly, so people who are not experts in construction documents can get to the documents that they need. We're basically translating construction needs into English. So cool. Does my boss have anything to say? I mean, great job. I'm not fired, so. Cool. Well, all right, so I thank you for everyone's time. I'm really humbled and happy to be here, and hopefully I shared some ideas and hopefully just changed the thinking a little bit of the industry. So cool. Thank you very much.